do that. Anyway, so the first question has three parts, so you guys can take them any way you want to, but I'll read it. It says, how would each of you differentiate / explain? One is core messaging, two is website homepage copy, and three is conversion copy. So I don't know how you want to approach that.
Aaron, did you want to get us started?
Sure. For me, core messaging is the kind of stuff that I used to do in the corporate world. I spent, God, I don't even know how many years, 17 years doing corporate communications. And core messaging for me, as I know it, is the stuff that stays internal to your team. It's almost the football playbook by which you know you're going to run your plays. For me, you set it up ahead of time and say, okay, these are the kinds of things that we want to say. And then you cascade those out into your public-facing content, which is number 2 and 3, the website copy and the conversion copy. For me, it's easiest to define conversion copy first, and that is anything that is asking your reader to take an action, whether that's donate or sign up or sell, or sorry, buy. And then quote unquote web content for me is anything else. Your homepage copy, your about copy, your services copy. You can have conversion elements in the homepage, for example, in your hero or in a call to action, or you can have little micro conversions like click here or find out more. But no, that's the easiest way for me to differentiate those. Core messages are internal. Quote unquote web content is external facing educational and branding content, and then conversion copy is the stuff that actually you're trying to get a response to. Let me know in chat if that doesn't make sense.
Abby, did you want to share next?
Yeah, so I guess with me, kind of along the same lines as Aaron, but I differentiate slightly in core messaging. So I tend to split it into internal core messaging and then external core messaging. So the internal core messaging is like the brand beliefs, this kind of thing that staff live and die by, basically. Core messaging, the external side, I would say it is the basic messaging that doesn't change, and that you promote on all of your marketing materials. So say your taglines or your brand messaging, this kind of thing. So I kind of split that into two. Sometimes they overlap. They do tend to overlap. Website homepage copy, yeah, that's basically just whatever is going on the website. Conversion, again, kind of landing pages, promotion of lead magnets, that kind of thing. Your call to actions. So as Aaron said, pay now, buy now, volunteer, donate. So your call to actions, basically.
Yeah, I would just add to that, again, ditto on what's already been said. I would add to that when you're in the weeds writing, so whether that is conversion copy, website or homepage copy, or any other page, it's kind of like building that strategy quarterly and reviewing it as opposed to executing it. The core messaging, the reason that you define it ahead of time, or hopefully, is because it's what Aaron was saying about it being internal, is that it's a really good reference that you can come back to so that you don't necessarily wander too far away from it, whether you're trying to describe something really effectively or inspire someone to action. It's still really important to make sure that you're capturing that core messaging, because that's at the heart of we call it like one of the 3 pillars, but one of the 3 pillars of content strategy, but that's one of the things that is going to differentiate you. You need to know how you're different before you can convey how you're different. Again, if it doesn't make sense, feel free to drop that in chat. All right, Barry, have you got another one for us?
First, are there any follow-up questions on this whole thing? No, it doesn't look like it. Oh.
I'm muted again, but Aaron asked if there's any follow-up questions. Anybody have questions regarding this before we move on?
Ben, this question came from you, did it not? Is that answer what does that give you clarity on what you're looking for?
Yeah, I guess follow up mainly for you, Aaron. When you differentiated like website homepage copy versus conversion copy, you differentiated where it goes, kind of, and you described, well, conversion copy is intended to make someone take an action or convert. So what would you say, like when you're writing just a website or homepage copy that's not specifically the conversion aspects, like what are your purposes or goals? Like what are you trying to convey in that versus conversion copy specifically?
It's interesting you homed in on that homepage, because it's the page for me that serves two purposes. I mean, you have to well, three purposes, I guess. You've got to orient people to your company. You know, congratulations, this is us. Because clearly, no matter what page they come into, they're going to hit the homepage eventually. So you have to let them know they're in the right spot and that you've got what they want. You've got to try to compel action further into the site. You've got to, you know, help them get deeper into what they think that they need. And then, yeah, the third purpose, the homepage, like few others on the site, is to contain some of those same conversion pieces. It's almost like a magazine cover where you're selling the idea of picking up that magazine at the grocery store and paying for it. So I guess it's almost an arbitrary distinction, but for me, when I think about conversion copy, for me, that's Facebook ads and emails and landing pages and little boxes that say download now or click here and so on and so forth. I don't know whether I'm making it more clear or less, but I hope it's the former.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Right on.
I like the magazine cover analogy. That's good.
You know, if you're an armchair copywriter or an enthusiast of copy, you can do a lot worse while you're waiting to buy your groceries than to look at Cosmopolitan. Their headlines are spectacular, and the other magazines try to follow suit too, because they're all competing for the same eyeballs, right? And they're only unless you've got a subscription, their only way to get you to buy that thing is to catch your eye and convince you there's something inside that you want to read. Cosmo's great. The gossip rags are good for that. People magazine, if you're curious, is a real way to get your finger on the pulse of what quote unquote America thinks about and wants to see. There's all kinds of insights you can get from the grocery store line.
One thing I'll also add on the topic of conversion copy, specifically within a website. So conversion copy, as I think Aaron has made very clear, goes way above and beyond what might be on a website. But I think that part of the benefit of identifying where the conversions, what pages in particular, what conversions you want on each page, whether a page is part of a larger customer like journey, so to speak, can be really valuable, because you might look at a site map and say, oh, okay, this is a good opportunity to convert. This is a good opportunity to convert. Or on the home page and think, okay, this section is a good opportunity to convert. But unless you understand how, or I should say, there's the opportunity for you to think about and understand and even document, as I know that Ben does very well, how someone is going to be moving through different conversions and different pieces of a website, for example, but in order to get towards different engagements with you. I don't know if I made that simpler or made it worse, but just that these are part of something bigger. It's good to know how you're converting on the micro level, but there's a huge opportunity to identify, what is going to be that initial small ask, right? How is that leading into maybe a larger call to action or ask? And what is your kind of end goal, and what are the touch points along the way? Because of course, as we all know, you don't want to ask someone to marry you on the first date.
I guess that I'd like to add something as well. Like you really want to make sure that it's consistent. So if you're aiming for somebody to sign up to something, just make sure that that is the end goal and you're keeping that in mind. Don't kind of dilute the user journey by confusing them with too many calls to actions to do loads of different things. You want to make sure that if they're clicking sign up here, they're going to sign up there, and it's not, you know, completely irrelevant. It's all about a consistent user journey, so nobody's getting confused.
This actually might be a really good time to bring in Kevin Williams's question, who asked on a landing page, what's the recommended for number of call to actions? Like how much are you driving that home? So like buy now, schedule a call, join our mailing list. So if I'm hearing you correctly, Kevin, you're asking the literal number of call to actions, or are you asking what the number of different like leading towards different goals can or should be? Can you just clarify?
More different. So what I'm thinking is on a landing page, someone may not be ready to buy now. So if it's a high ticket item, which we're trying to sell, they may not be at that stage to buy at that moment in time. And I don't want to lose them. I want to be able to give them a different option that they might want to be able to schedule a call, or they're not kind of ready yet, but maybe in a few months they might be. So maybe, you know, download something or join the mailing list or something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that that makes sense. Aaron, I see you unmuted yourself. Is that because you're like have a really great answer?
I think so. From what I understand, Kevin, nice to see you again. The last time I saw you, I saw 3 of you because of the amount of tequila I had. Apologize for that. You're looking for different calls to action on a landing page. I want to say my first impulse is a big fat no, and I'll tell you why. I want to get if you're paying me to get people to your landing page, that page has one goal: to do the thing, right? Let's say it's buy a high ticket item. So when you guys have many of you, I'm sure, have seen my Pro Elite sales page for Brent and Steve. And what you do on that page is you buy it or you don't buy it. And then what happens after that is that's when the alternative calls to action come in. On this Black Friday campaign that we just did with them, the only goal of that landing page was to get these people into U Academy, right? There was one offer. It was, hey, buy this monthly. And that was it. Then the email series started up with, hey, do you have questions? Give us a call. Hey, join this Zoom where we're going to do this and this live. And, you know, behind the scenes, their marketing strategist was slicing and dicing that list so we could say, show us everybody who looked at the first piece of content, but not the second and the third, and re-offer them 2 and 3, and then show me everybody that did click to the landing page but didn't buy, so that we can target them with this other offer. I would prefer to see your readers have one choice on that sales page, and then you use a combination afterward of additional content and additional calls to action in email and phone sales and whatever else you can do to present them with several opportunities. If they don't buy during your buying period, then you can bump them down to a mailing list, and maybe they'll do like you said and come back 3 or 4 months later. But I worry about confusing them. Just like Abby said, you don't want to confuse people with multiple calls of action. I worry about confusing them and sending them off down the rabbit hole where they decide they're going to schedule a call and then get distracted, or they can sign up for some other explanatory document and then never come back, or they wander off to your Instagram and forget because they get distracted by pictures of Kim Kardashian or whatever it is, right? I want to put people on rails and send them down what Joe Sugarman calls the slippery slope or the slippery slide, so that they get hooked by the headline, and by the end of the page, there's a choice. It's either buy this or don't buy this. That's really the only choice that I would want to have for people to have on your landing page.
I would add to this, I'm seeing some nods from Abby as well. I'm on the same page. There are some circumstances in which, you know, we might consider like a single other call to action, but even that, I feel like I probably shouldn't even have said that. Actually, forget I said that. No,
I'm a new man now. After Mindfix, it's possible to disagree with me without me tearing people's heads off. So don't worry.
Awesome. Well, I haven't been through that, so I don't know if I can disagree without tearing your head off, Aaron. But no, actually, I just want to expand on that a little bit, which is that nothing, and this is kind of what we said last time, is that nothing exists, the most effective conversion pieces, so to speak, do not exist in a silo. Even a landing page, which is really like the smallest unit of a whole kind of conversion, right? Sorry, that's probably misleading. But on a landing page where you can bring people in who are relatively cool and potentially sell them on something, doesn't exist in a silo. You need to know, where are you driving people to that landing page from? Who are those people that you're driving? Where does that fit into the overall campaign? If we're talking about a high ticket item, it's going to be 10 times harder to sell people who are totally cold to who you are on a super high ticket item versus people who, for example, have already been following you for a while, have already been on your mailing list. So once again, while it's good to have a single call to action, some of the concerns I'm hearing from you, Kevin, which is, people may not be ready to buy. What I'm hearing from Aaron, just to expand on that, is that it's not necessarily as simple as capturing as many people as you can on that landing page. You want to have things set up ahead of time to either warm them up or to, like segment or filter the list or to create a different list for these types of people. And you want to have some safety mechanisms in place so that even if they do not convert there, you can still nurture them and potentially engage them at a later point. And those components can be kind of as simple or as complex as they need to be, or as you have the resources to make them. But it's a bigger question than just what does the landing page say. I don't know if Aaron, Abby, if you agree or want to.
Yeah, so generally speaking, I think the average customer will interact with your brand, your company 7 times before they actually buy from you. So if the landing page is the first time that they're actually, they know of you, they're not going to buy. It doesn't matter how well written it is or, how beautifully designed it is. They're still going to go away, do their research, maybe look at competitors, whatever. But I always live by the one call to action on a landing page, because people are so easily distracted. And like Aaron says, they'll go to Instagram, they'll go look at Kim Kardashian's butt rather than, buy a brand new TV off you, So for me with landing pages, I tend to focus on just harvesting that information from them. So their name, their contact details, that kind of thing, and then putting them into email automation, that kind of thing, so that you can develop that relationship with them, especially with high ticket items as well. They need to trust you. They need to know that, you're trustworthy and that you're reliable. And if you do put them into email series, that kind of thing, or, you call them afterwards, then at least they get that relationship working. And then, there's more chance of you selling. But also with measurability with landing pages, if you're sending them off to different pages on your website, it's very difficult to see the return on investment that you've put into the landing page, because you don't know if, you don't know what part of their journey has caused them to buy. So with the landing page, I think just focus on one call to action and just measuring it and seeing how you get the return on it.
Kevin, the other thing too, you can pixel those things now, right? If you put a Facebook pixel on that landing page and a Facebook pixel on your thank you page, you can then start to build a custom audience of people who saw pixel 1 but didn't see pixel 2. So you've got a way to send them Facebook ads that can be as on the nose as, hey, did you forget something? Or that can be as subtle as, showing up in their feed 2 months later with another content offer from you to help build on what Abby was saying about the times it's going to take them to know, like, and trust you. My lovely wife just brought me an espresso on my request, so I'm now going to watch the difference in my personality as I caffeinate. And in 15 minutes from now, I'm going to be literally unrecognizable.
All right. Well, we'll give you a few minutes to drink your coffee and maybe let Abby answer the next question first. What have you got for us, Barry?
Well, we have a whole list of, I'd say they're objections that you have to deal with that Stephen posted. I don't know if you want me to go one at a time because they are different.
Why don't
Or leave that till the end.
we have until 11:30, so why don't we maybe make, and Abby and Aaron, this wasn't planned, so tell me if you agree or disagree. Why don't we maybe make like the last half hour like objection half hour where we like tackle objections?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah. So let's try and get these like more concrete questions.
Okay, yeah, that's good. This one's from Devin. When is the best time in the proposal /sales /discovery process to get a quote from you as a copywriter? What's your recommendation for improving the accuracy of said quote?
Abby, why don't you take us away?
Yeah, sure. So obviously anyone here that knows me knows that, you know, I've always worked with island website design before setting up my own content business. So what we always did was during the discovery process, so we'd gather all the customer requirements, we'd have the sitemap figured out, we'd have exactly what each page is going to entail, and then I'd come in and basically just say, okay, this is going to take this amount of research, this amount of writing, and then add, you know, a certain amount of editing and all that kind of thing on top. So very much, I think towards the end of your discovery process, so the end of your gathering of the requirements is the best time. I mean, once you kind of get a working relationship with a content writer, you kind of know how long it will take them to do stuff. You'll know if they have to interview the client or you're going to do it, or if they can just work off your discovery documents. But in general, I'd say that I usually come in with my web copywriting work towards the end. So once you've already got the sitemap, that kind of thing.
I would answer this a little bit differently. We find that people come to us in one of two different situations. Often if it's the first time they're working with us, they come to us honestly after they've already sold a project and they're like, hey, we sold content. Now we need someone to deliver it. What can we get for this budget? But we find we tend to flip that as we work with people. Kind of like Abby said, you get to know both the agencies that you're working with, and they get to know you as a writer or a strategist. I would say that it also depends whether you're working with a copywriter or a content strategist. And I will differentiate those two in that a copywriter is going to take your strategy and your notes and your reference materials and write something that is usually, if they're a copywriter, usually something that has some sort of conversion focus to it, versus a content strategist is going to fill in the gaps to create a strategy around content, gather all the information they need and reference material they need themselves or request it of you before they write copy. So, and I think we had another question about the process, so this will kind of speak to that a little bit as well. So those two are probably going to be a little bit different. For us as content strategists, we almost always do the content strategy as the first thing that happens once the proposal has been signed. Maybe there is, I'm seeing a nod from Abby as well. So I'm, quite often that means that we're going to get going as soon as possible. Maybe they're going to do one kickoff call or something like that, but then they're feeding into our content strategy process because we need that done before we do the copy. And they need the copy before you might need the copy before you move on to design or something else. So we actually prefer to know as soon as possible, pretty much. Part of what we do, and this will depend on your strategist, depend on your copywriter. Like, for example, we will help you determine the sitemap. If you are part of our partner web or if you've worked with us before, then we might be supporting you in discovery and adding to your discovery process in some way. So for us, the ideal is definitely as early as possible in the process, even just so that we know that it's on our radar, but also so that we can support you through that as much as possible. If you haven't worked with us before, we can let you know kind of what we need or what that process is going to look like so that you're not doing discoveries, doing a proposal, and then trying to figure it out. But that depends also on the intensity of the strategy that a copywriter or content strategist might be doing. A copywriter who is not doing that kind of strategy, it is probably okay to let them know a little bit later in the process because their pricing model is probably probably going to be something more like per word, and they're just going to work with whatever you give them. So there isn't a ton of time, and as long as they can fit it into their schedule and their workload, it's not going to be as big of a deal. For a content strategist, especially a content strategy agency, you know, like ours in particular, you know, like we have multiple strategists who are working on projects. We just want to be part of that as early as possible. What's your recommendation for improving the accuracy of said quote? Well, for us, we have packages. So we just suggest that you tune in, you just check in and make sure that what it is that you're looking at is where it's going to fit. And that's the best way to improve accuracy for us. Aaron, I heard you starting to chime in there. Was that not you?
I will confess that I'm kind of internally screaming that could be the espresso. I don't know. It's funny because I simultaneously agree with everything you're saying, but also disagree with it. Like, let me try to find a metaphor. I get a lot of my touch points from movies, and I just recently watched Taken, the one with Liam Neeson, talking about his very particular set of skills. I feel a lot like that. But there are clients. I have multiple clients who call me the fixer. Steve actually calls me Winston Wolfe from Pulp Fiction because I can rush in and give him what he needs and clean up the mess and then leave. So I think I agree with what you're saying about the strategy. Disagree because I do as much of it, whether I'm doing the work of a content marketing strategist or the work of a content strategist or the work of a copywriter. I think where I might differ is I know that you have a much more understandable process because a lot of what I do is intuitive. It happens very quickly, and it's based on doing it for 20 years and in 100 industries, and just sort of like it can feel very ad hoc, to my disadvantage, I think, because people who have not worked with me before, they don't see the benefit of, they don't see me scheduling 6 meetings with a client and saying, okay, now we're going to focus on this, now we're going to focus on that, right? But on the flip side, there's what I'm seeing on the ground is a lot of times people need that speed, right? I end up seeing 4 different things. I see people who come to me, you know, maybe just out of boot camp, or maybe when they finally have realized that they want to transition over to copy, and they say, I know that I want to do copy. Can you do X? You know, can you show me what I need to know so that when I get a good project, then I'm going to be prepared? Or they'll come exactly like you said, and they'll say, I just sold this and I have a budget of $3,500. What can you do for that? Or can you do this ridiculous amount of work for that? So, you know, in the first case, the conversation will be, all right, well, here's what you could do down the road and do this and this. In the second case, it's a conversation much like the one I had with Devin this week, where you say, oh, okay, well, if, you know, at your current scope, I might have said it was going to cost this much. What's in the budget? How can we work on it? I don't want to take away pages from their sitemap, so maybe we can do less work on this section, and yes, we can bring it in under budget. Scenario number 3 is much more after those, you know, where they've done it before, like you said, and then they come to you and say, how much will it be to do A, B, and C? You know, I'm starting to think about content from the perspective of, say, or from Abby or from Aaron, and now I feel like maybe we need this. How much might that cost? What should I build into the proposal? For me, that's one of the best times, because you can work with them to shape that thing and work with them to build on their profit into it, so they can go to the customer with a number that the customer doesn't get surprised by later, and so on. But, you know, the reality of anything except the 4th situation, which is the, oh my God, my hair's on fire, can you fix this now, is that it's a give and take. In all those other first 3, it's a give and take, where for me, my number one imperative is to not put that agency in a bad spot. I don't want to have to send them back to their client and go, oh, it's double the work, so it's going to be double the price, right? So I tend to get, I think, a little, I tend to give short shrift to strategy, because it's the thing for me that I can rely on intuitively and sort of acts in order to keep the bill down. You know what I mean? So I guess the short version of the long answer is, yeah, as soon as possible in that process is awesome. But I don't mind if you come at any time in that process with any number, if you can have the kind of conversation where we can work back and forth and say, oh no, okay, that's fine. You know, your number is okay. Just what can we do for that number? Or can you get any more than that number? Because then we could do this and this. Or, you know, like for me, it's a kind of a give and take, because the reality of it is just the same way that you and Abby and I are super busy all the time with like 14 more projects than we need. So is everybody else, right? So they'll come to us, and sometimes it's not practical to go, okay, now let's budget for 4 weeks of talking about this stuff, you know? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I guess that, like, in an ideal situation, you know, the content strategist would be, you know, brought on board as soon as possible. But sometimes that just doesn't work. And especially when you get to the point where clients are committed to providing their own content, but they're just not bringing it to the table at all. Whether they're not providing any, or it's just terrible. You know, sometimes you do need to reach out to a copywriter or a content strategist or whatever. And, you know, you just need a solution in time, basically. And that's part of content strategy as well. I mean, you know, just reacting to the situation where we're needed. So I guess it's all about being flexible as well. Like in an ideal world, yeah, you know, we'd come in and we'd help you, you know, figure out the proposal and the sitemap and everything. But sometimes you're kind of putting out other people's fires for them. And that's okay as well. I guess it's a mix.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I agree. You know, Devin's question was, when is the best time? And I think that, you know, it is a separate question from what's your recommendation for the accuracy of said quote, right? What I'm hearing from Aaron is that often when given a quote that is finite, which is similar for us as well, there's things you can do to make that quote work while still giving the maximum value possible. But what I'm hearing from Abby is that, you know, in an ideal world, we want to come into the picture as early as possible to help you improve the accuracy of the quote kind of upfront. But it depends on the situation.
I mean, as much as anybody, I'd love to have two packages, right? The truck full of money and the half a truck full of money. But it doesn't always work out that way. So, you know, I am both a realist and a capitalist. So I'm more than willing to negotiate in, you know, whatever fashion I can grab you by the ankles and empty out your pockets by tipping you upside down. I'm totally down.
All right. Devin, did that answer your question? Did you have any follow-up? I say a head shake and a thumbs up. All right. So Barry, I see you are ready to throw us another one.
Yeah. The next question, I think you kind of answered some of it. It said, would love to know more about the process, key stages to watch for and avoid problems. I think you touched on some of that already.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump into this one first. I'm kind of hearing two things. And who asked this question? Do you know, Barry?
I don't.
Is the person who asked this question here? Okay, that's fine. So I'll just address it as it's written. So I'm hearing, want to learn more about the process and key stages to watch for and avoid problems. So I'm hearing that there is asking about the process in general, and then asking, you know, what key stages problems potentially happen in where you can avoid them. So
yeah, that's my question.
Oh, awesome.
That was my question.
Did I interpret it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So in terms of process, you know, I'll speak for us. Again, we have a more established process. So we literally break our process down into 3 sections, or actually 4 sections. We call them chapters, actually, and then they can grow or shrink as needed for the project. So we define it as sales support, which could also be in this group, discovery support is probably pretty accurate. then content strategy, and then the actual copywriting, and then ongoing content. So for us, those are kind of the 4 buckets. And not every project has every one of those pieces of the process. And each one of those pieces does have kind of sub pieces, obviously. But that's more like what the process is happening. The sales support usually happens before you have a proposal, whatever that process looks like for you. The content strategy is where we're figuring out for us what we call the 3 pillars of content strategy. So we are helping you just clarify and define the audience in the context of content and copy and conversion. We're talking about, like your uniques and your messaging and what sets you apart. And then we're talking about your voice and the tone that we're going to be bringing to different pieces of copy as the content strategy. The copywriting is the literal writing and feedback process. And then ongoing content is looking at how can we support their long-term sales or strategic goals with content month to month or quarter to quarter. In terms of key stages to watch for and avoid problems, if we're talking about problems, well, arguably, almost every problem is coming from the client's end most of the time, if we're going to be totally honest, whether that's delays or not being ready, etc. 2 things come top of mind for me. One, and these are in no particular order because I wasn't pre-prepped for this question. I guess that's redundant. Anyway, one of them is in the feedback cycle. I have seen a lot of problems coming in the revision and feedback cycle. Whether it is the client, like emailing you back or leaving a comment that just has like a question mark or 3 dots with no context, or whether they message you back freaking out because they hate the content and everything about it sucks. And then you actually hop on a call with them and you find out that you could just make this little tweak and that little tweak and all of a sudden it works well. That I would say is one of the big places that I see a lot of delays and issues. We've been able to address a lot of this by sending a prep video a la Brad Martineau, helping people understand the logistics of giving feedback and the kind of, how to give good feedback, sharing the process with them every step of the way, and then actually doing a part of it live. We find that like eliminates a lot of those potential issues. But before that, like the revision stages could just be nightmarish sometimes. Or, the client changes their mind and that actually would be another key stage is the handoff. So I think I'm working backwards here, is the handoff between, okay, now we're ready to write. And maybe the client, after you've started writing, changes their mind. This happened on a project just now. Earlier today, I got word where we have the entire copy written and all of a sudden the client has decided that they're changing part of their business or part of their offerings. And now what you've written is obsolete. So that is another place in the process I see issues happening. And closely related to that is them not providing you with a resource. So pretty much coming to you during the writing and being like, oh, hey, here's this extra stuff that I know I didn't mention or give to you and that we've gone through this whole process and haven't considered. But, oh, by the way, it's super important and I need to make sure you include it and et cetera, et cetera. And again, some of the ways to mitigate that is just in the expectation where when you're speaking with them, you're just very clear. Here's when we're going to start writing. Here's when we need anything from you, just so you know, we're moving forward in writing now. If you're bringing something new in, at the very, very least, it's going to way delay things, or it's potentially even going to cost more depending where in the process we're at. So for me, those are the 3 that kind of pop to mind. I'm sure there's more. Abby or Erin, did either one of you, I see Abby, you caught my eye, so why don't you jump in?
So I guess like my own process is kind of 7-stage. So obviously we do the requirements gathering first, just to make sure that we understand exactly what's required and what's expected and what deliverables are needed as well. Then the research phase, so we go off and we do competitor analysis, all of that jazz. Then we have the content strategy is delivered. So exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, what we're measuring, and any ongoing stuff as well that we recommend, and how it's going to fit into what the client already has. Because, obviously, if it's just a website, then it doesn't exist in a vacuum. And then, we have the initial copy done. Then we move into revisions, edits, this kind of thing. Then we have the sign off and the launch, and then ongoing kind of work if there's marketing or anything else, or, you know, anything to be added. I guess problems again would be really client focused, I guess, which, yeah, I guess nobody that's working with clients is really surprised by that. So I guess the first stage of a client issue would be during the requirements gathering, because they might not know what they want. They might not know their own target market. It depends on how developed they are as a business as well. So if they're all over the place and they want to do 20 different things and all of them speak to different markets, it's kind of, no matter what strategy you develop for them, it's not going to deliver them the entire world. So it's really just about kind of reining the client in sometimes and figuring out what they actually want to achieve and what's important to them. And then I guess, as Say mentioned, the feedback. So how long it can take to get feedback. I tend to set out very strict deadlines of I need to deliver my deliverables on this date. You need to provide your feedback on this date. If either of us miss that, then, you know, we're gonna run behind. So it's, and as Say mentioned again, you know, having live feedback as well. So actually sitting down with the client, if it's in person or via Zoom or wherever, and just discussing how they feel about the work that's been delivered, what they'd like to see change, this kind of thing. So that, I think a lot can be misconstrued in an email or whatever, you know, or gather content or Google Docs or whatever. But if you actually sit down face to face with someone, you can figure out where their issues are lying. And sometimes, you know, they'll say, oh, I don't like this particular phrase, or I don't like how you've approached it here. But it might be another issue entirely as to why they're not happy with that. And I think that actually talking to them face to face will just eliminate so many of those issues, and deadlines, of course, which we all love. Aaron?
I recently discovered Zen Buddhism, and I try not to be the water that flows around the rock, you know, the reed that bends in the wind rather than snaps because it's too rigid. So my process is defined, but it has a single goal, and I'll explain that when I talk quickly through these stages. I start out by making sure that my agency contact is good, and maybe that's pre-sale, or that's during the sale, or, you know, during discovery, or after project launch. You know, I'll go over the site map and the discovery notes and the scope to make sure that they feel good about it, that we're on the same page, and we know technically from the point of view of what needs to be written, you know, how many pages there are, or what the sales page needs to do, and so on and so forth. Then I talk to the client initially and develop a content brief that I can get the client to sign off on. And then after they've signed off on it, you know, the voice and the tone, the basic approach and all that, start writing concurrently with meeting with subject matter experts. Then we go through the content review, and then we get to sign off. And my whole goal for that whole process is to make the client, the end client, feel like they are part of the thing, like they've bought in. Because the second you can get the client on board with the process, they become a whole different animal. If they feel invested in things, then I find they're a lot easier to work with, and much more responsive when it comes to feedback. And for me, I don't care what that feedback is. I don't care whether it's this is garbage or whether it's this is incredible, you know, whether it's we need to change this line or you've done this wrong. Because for me, what I discovered is that once they start making changes, it's because they've bought in. They have they're invested enough that they feel that they've got an emotional reason to help you make this thing better. So that leads to me, the only problem that I encounter is when I'm not allowed to talk to the client. There are people with us right now who've had projects go great with me. And there's also people on this call that have projects go horribly. And the common denominator with the horrible ones is I was not allowed to create that relationship with the client. You know, there was a wall there. There are people on this call even who've had projects go great with me and projects go horrible with me. And I think they can tell the difference. The ones that went well were the ones where we could talk to the client. We could work with the client one-on-one and say, okay, how about this? How about this? Here's this, la-di-da. And the ones that go bad are the ones where there's this kind of artificial wall between me and this mystery spaghetti monster up in the sky that I'm supposed to try to please. And literally no one on earth has ever bought into anything if the first time they're asked to do that is when they are presented with a copy deck. There's a quote floating around, I can't remember whose it is, but it goes, there's no stronger desire on earth than the desire to rewrite someone else's copy. It's true. Unless they feel like they've been part of the process the whole time along. I'm wrapping up a project with someone on the call right now where it's a religious focused thing. I know nothing about the religion, and have been basically running at full speed to try to catch up enough to be able to write in their voice. And the end client loves it because they've been there the whole time helping me get this stuff and helping me shape things, and they're super, super happy. Yeah, that feedback process has dragged on for weeks, but I don't think, maybe the agency involved is pulling their hair out because they wanted it finished faster than that, but I don't think they would sacrifice that speed for the knowledge that their client is very happy with what has happened and is going to be extremely pleased to launch this website.
I definitely agree with that 150. Like if I could like stand up and cheer, which I totally could, but it would hurt your eardrums. Getting like FaceTime is non-negotiable for us as well. We will not work on a project if we cannot speak directly to the client. And it's for exactly that reason. You want to build a relationship with them, right? You want to be able to hear them and also to address potential concerns, red flags, misunderstandings, issues as early in the process as possible, and set clear boundaries and agreements as early as possible. We too have worked on projects where, we weren't necessarily industry subject matter experts, but if you can create a dynamic of safety with your client where you can ask those clarification questions, and you have those kind of pieces built into the process for them to double check in on things, right? Like for us doing the content strategy, although we cannot boast the 20 plus years of experience that Erin has. So that piece is a little bit more important for us, because that saves a lot of issues in the revisions, is to know what the messaging is going to be, is to have that clarity, to have that buy-in, to have that agreement, not just, okay, you submit a strategy and they approve it, but educating them, walking them through it, getting feedback as you go, making adjustments on things that aren't quite right. At that point, the copy it's probably an exaggeration to say that it's almost a formality, but a lot of the confusion and the potential shock has already been addressed. And now when they're seeing it, even if there's something that maybe doesn't quite work, as Erin said, there is that sense of safety and trust to be able to talk it out and shift it and address it. So I think we have, if I'm looking at the sheet correctly, I think we have one more question before we go into objection handling.
Yeah, there's one more, and we won't even talk about that other one. Kelly asked us in the chat, and I think you touched on a lot of it. Do you have a handful of questions you wish clients, and then in brackets agency partners, would come prepared to answer for you before getting into starting a project? And I'd actually love to see you guys put something together to provide to us as, what are the questions we have to ask when it comes to content before we get you involved, or as we're talking to the customer, or even in discovery?
Let me just see if I'm understanding this question correctly. So is the question, what are some questions that that essentially we're going to ask you before we start a project, or that you need to ask your client before we start?
Yeah, I think that's it. What questions do you want to be able to ask even before you get into, get on the on-ramp to the project? Like, what questions do you need to ask? And you just wish people came prepared to answer those questions, and you ask them. You sort of know that I'm going to always ask this handful of questions to figure out what I need to do first to provide the content service. What are those basic get to the starting line kind of questions that people are never prepared, that you just think, oh my gosh, how can you call and ask me this without being able to tell me this or this?
I have some thoughts kind of floating around my head, but Abby, you've been quiet the last little while. Are you prepared to answer?
Do you know what? I used to actually have a questionnaire that I gave clients to kind of run through and get them in the right frame of mind before I start. I guess it depends on the type of work that I'm going to be doing and the type of client as well. I think that you kind of need to warm them up to the idea of what it is that we're going to be doing together, and figure out what they want from it and what they want to communicate with their client, with their ideal client, their ideal customer at the end of it. I think that an important aspect for me is to find writing that they enjoy as well, that they think that would, they'd like their content to be like. So, competitors, it doesn't even have to be in the same industry, just writing that they like the style of and that they enjoy reading, and then seeing if their end client likes that as well. And, I think it's important to kind of stress to them that the website isn't about them, it's about their end customer. So although they may think that they want to cover this on the website and, these calls to actions or push this service or whatever, it is about the end client. And just to kind of bring them into the right frame of mind, and also get them ready for its heavy breathing from Aaron. The espresso was kicked in.
Sorry, I forgot that I had my mic on.
He's just rearing at the beat. That's his
no,
song.
I was
Yeah,
just like what you hear. With a sensitive mic, you can hear my brain in action, right? Just like heavy breathing while I'm trying to arrange thoughts in my head. I apologize. I'm not really being the creepy caller on the phone. It's like, what are you wearing?
What content are you thinking about?
What are you writing right now?
But yeah, no, I guess it really depends on the type of project. But in general, I just want to prep them for thinking about content. So rather than, being concerned more about, what imagery they're going to be using or, what pages they're going to have, anything like that. It's the real message behind the content is to kind of, it's just, I know I'm rambling now, but it's just to remind them of what the website is for, basically, and to just kind of prep them in that. So I guess provide examples of writing that they like. Very handy to have examples of writing that they hate as well, because if you can avoid that, it's fantastic. But I'm sure that I've forgotten a huge amount of information right now, but we'll go to Sarah and I'm sure they'll fill in the details.
Well, yeah, Mr. Heavy Breathing, go for it.
Yeah, no, because I was, I'm working on I'm writing on my Peloton as we do the Zoom call, and no, not at all. I am institutionally lazy. I'm of the mind that a writer should be as lazy as possible, because the less sort of repetitive work you can do, the more you've got time to like ideate and actually write. So round about several years ago when this guy Ben Hunt came on and talked to U Academy about his circuit process, my ears pricked up and I thought, oh, I'm going to check that out and see if I can adapt that for the work that I do. So the long and the short of it is I have, God, I don't even know, 60, 80 questions maybe that I have internalized that I will ask different variations of to clients. I would be happy to share those questions. And then I will tell you that I took those questions one step further and actually systemized them in a way that gets dripped out over the period of about 5 or 6 emails, where they are presented with a video that's me talking, saying, hey, here's this form, and we're going to get you to do this and this and this and this. So they get this scenario, or this sequence rather, sent to them by email, and then they fill out these forms in Google. And then Stephanie, who I'm staring at right now on my screen, said, hey, you know what? What if we white labeled that? So she and I built this thing where for the for the low price of I have been licensing to web agencies. It's all white labeled now. It doesn't have my logo anywhere. It's just got my questions and a more professionally recorded version of the same videos that I did for myself, that you can build into a thing like ActiveCampaign or MailChimp to send out to your clients ahead of time. So the short version of, are there questions that we should be asking our clients, has 3 parts. Yes, there are. I can share them. I can share mine with you if you want to work with me to pick and choose for you which ones are the most essential. Or 2, you're more than welcome to read all of them and hook me up with your clients to get me to ask them. Or 3, yeah, if you're interested, we can work on this white label thing for you too, and get that stuff into your hands so that you can say, congratulations, we're going to be working together. We've got a copywriter for you. He's going to take care of your homepage and your about page and your services and build you a couple landing pages. Here's his process. Give us your email and we'll sign you up for this thing that we've created with him. And you'll be given homework that you'll do in 10-minute spurts over the next week. And then, bingo, we've got 2 things come out of that. Number 1, a wealth of answers from the client about their thoughts and preferences and what they like and what they don't like and what they think about the service they provide and the problems that they solve. And second, we've got that buy-in. They are all of a sudden invested to the tune of 6 surveys where they've actually thought about this stuff and they've started the process in their brain of contributing to better content for their site, to better copy for their sales page, to better response from their emails or their Facebook ads, and to being more participatory in the feedback later on because they've already been on board with, yes, I want this to succeed. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I'm going to take a little bit of a different direction on my answer, and just if only because it does really help us out, at least at Anansi. When you come to us and you say, hey, I have a new project, there actually are a few specific questions I will ask you that you need to have the information on. And they're a little bit more logistical, so not half as sexy as that really, really cool sounding series of surveys and videos that I'm now very intrigued in. But we'll ask, first of all, I'll say, can you describe the project in 30 seconds or less? I'll ask what the project goal is. I'll ask where in the sales process you are. We talked about that before, right? Is this something that you already sold and need tomorrow? Or is this something that, you are just starting your first discovery call? And for us, what's also really important to know is who's the business's primary audience? How many audiences do they have? Who are those audiences? From that question, I can usually tell how focused the company is, whether some of those audiences are segments or whether they need totally different kind of like funnels or journeys. We also definitely want to know how many stakeholders are actively involved on the client's end. Again, I see a nod from Abby. If it's like one person or even two people, like a solopreneur, and maybe, you know, like I just got off a client call with, you know, just like a woman and her husband, as opposed to, you know, an industry leading organization where you're going to have 4 people on every single call and they all need to make a decision. We're going to handle those projects totally differently. And we're also going to price those projects differently, because if we're juggling 4 stakeholders on every call, that's just a different dynamic, and you need more time. More people need more time to make decisions. You know, we'll talk about, is there an established budget or budget range? You know, or are you coming to help determine that? Is this something we need to be aware of? And then how will this is actually a question from the original discovery docs. I don't remember if it was Barbara or Brent's. How will the success of the project be measured in numbers? Sometimes content is part of the brand. Sometimes content is trying to achieve very specific conversion results for a campaign, right? Are you driving a flash sale for an e-commerce site, or are you helping a company that's really chaotic with its messaging get really clear and simple? And then last but not least, what have you already planned or promised? Again, depending where you are in the sales cycle, what you might, sometimes you planned or promised nothing and you maybe just have a budget to work from. Sometimes, as Erin described, you are more so just thinking about a potential project that's coming up and trying to build your bench ahead of time, right? So then it's all very open. All of these things are things that just help us give you, this actually, I think Devin has left us now, but his question, how to get a more accurate quote. For me, these are all things that, you know, if you have a relatively good idea of those things, we can give you a much better, quicker, and more accurate quote. Now, in terms of questions that, you know, you might be asking the client or something, I really just would say that whatever you're already, for us, whatever you're already tackling in whatever level of discovery you're doing, our goal is to fill in the gaps. So we're never going to rehash all the exact questions you asked during discovery. Everybody's discovery or version of it or planning process, you guys are all UGurus people, so it's mostly discovery, looks different and comes with different deliverables at the end and different kind of components that you're focusing on, also depending on what your focus as a company is, right? Again, if you're like branding or marketing or et cetera, discovery means different things for you. So for us, it's more important as we are starting a project to know how much work you've done and what it looks like and look at that so that we can build off of it, than for you to come with a specific set of questions that you've already asked or knowing that we're going to ask. Because like Erin, we have a bank of questions that we work from, and then we pick and choose the questions that are appropriate to dig deeper and to clarify anything or to help focus on something, as opposed to, you know, just always working our way down the same list. Did all of those answers, did they answer your question, Kelly? Yeah, okay, awesome. So I heard a throat clearing, I think. Was someone gonna say something? Oh, it's Barry, great.
You wanna go on to objections?
Yeah, let's
okay.
use our last 15 minutes and handle some.
So Stephen asked a bunch of questions. I'm going to ask the first 3 because they kind of go together. He said, what is content? Why do I need it? Why can't I just come up with my own? We're fine with removing this from the proposal. We'll do this internally and save money. So I haven't heard this. So
does anyone want to take that super loaded objection? I feel like we could have a session just on that.
Yeah, we could have an entire session on that. So, yeah, well, I will take the bait. We'll go for that one. Content is pretty much everything. Like, the beauty of content strategy is you can have 2 people working in content strategy and they both specialize in completely different areas completely. So say, you know, somebody could focus on email marketing, consider themselves a content strategist, and somebody else focuses on, you know, website content. So content is pretty much everything. If you want to get into the nitty gritty details, I mean, on a website, you know, content is sometimes includes photography. It includes, you know, graphics. It includes pretty much everything. What was the next question?
It was,
Fine on removing this from the proposal.
why do I know? The next question was,
Oh.
why do I need it?
Oh.
And the
So
next
your
question was, define moving it from the proposal.
My favorite kind of thing is like, why can't I do this myself? It's kind of like, if I watched a YouTube video on how to change the oil in my car, it doesn't make me a mechanic. You know, like if you specialize in content or you're a car mechanic, you study it for years, you do it for years, and you do it very well. You know, that's not to say that somebody can't write website content themselves, but are they going to consider the huge picture of where it fits brand strategy? You know, is it going to integrate fully with content marketing, email marketing, pretty much everything? Thank you for that, Barry. There's a list of questions now.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of doing it to save money, you may save money by, you know, doing it in-house, but you're going to waste hours of time. It's as
And
simple as that.
arguably not save money at all.
Yeah. So like, you know, if you do it yourself, then you're going to waste hours of your time doing something that you might not really enjoy or you might not be that very good at. And it's taking away from other aspects of your business that, you know, they could be focusing on more. And I know that both Aaron were jumping in there, so go ahead.
Well, you know, as far as why do you need content, unless you are selling beeswax candles in the basement of a church bazaar, or, you know, potatoes at a farmer's market, it really is all there is these days. You know, it doesn't matter whether somebody's looking you up to find your phone number so they can call you on the phone or your storefront. They're still going to need content to do that. It really is the stuff that makes everything happen, whether that's getting found in the search engine or convincing someone to come to the store or convincing them to buy on your site or winning them over to your cause or, you know, helping them feel that you're better than a competitor. Content is all there is. That's I think that the easiest way to answer the question about why they need it. Why shouldn't I do it myself? We are among friends here, so allow me to share what feels like a self-serving graphic, but I promise it's not. It just happens to have my logo on it because it's what I use when I'm talking to people. You guys can all see this chart?
Yep.
This is my chart. I drew it on the back of a napkin, and then I had Charlie Paulson lay it out for me. And I'll explain what's going on here. On the left side, you'll see gain, 1 to 5 stars. This is a sort of an arbitrary measure of how much you stand to gain by working with all these different options. Across the bottom, you've got pain, measured on 1 to 7. And those are added up according to this little key up in the top left corner. Where, you know, you're going to spend some time, you're going to spend some money, spend some effort. So you can see sprinkled around this chart are all these different options, right? Down at the bottom, 5 pain and 1 gain is do it yourself. And that's going to take a bunch of time and a lot of effort. Over here at the bottom right of the chart is I know this guy. Like, I don't know whether that's your nephew or whether, you know, your niece took an advertising course in college or, you know, somebody that you know from the poker tournament is the quote-unquote writer. That may cost you not very much money, but it will take you a ton of time and a ton of effort. Up at the top, you can see me proudly advertising my truck full of money and half a truck full of money packages. But there's sort of three lines here. There's the one that runs vertically, and that's maximum acceptable pain. You don't want anything to the right of that line because it's just going to be too much pain to be worth it. The horizontal one in the middle there is minimum acceptable gain. You don't want anything below that line because it's just not worth doing. So your viable options suddenly become really only a staff writer.
Yes, can I get
a staff writer,
small strawberry banana milkshake?
I'll have a small strawberry banana milkshake too, please. Whoever's ordering the milkshake, please sign me up for one. I didn't know I needed one, but now I want nothing else besides a strawberry banana milkshake. when you take this viable option line, you'll see the only two that are above that line are a staff writer or an agency like me or Nancy or Abigail, right? If you're lucky enough to have somebody on staff, you can sort of pretend that it doesn't cost you any money because you've already paid for their salary. And it costs you less time and less effort because you can simply tell them what to do, and the threat of getting fired will kind of compel them to do it. Other than that, it's somebody like me where, yes, you're going to pay money, but it's going to take so much less time and so much less effort than any other of these solutions that it's counterintuitive to consider any of the other ones. I hope that makes sense. That's my little soapbox. Please elect me President of the United States 2020. Thank you so much.
That was awesome. That was super great. I really like the way you've laid it out.
Charlie
Hey,
Colson
can
is
I
in the
make
awesome
a-
business.
I know I'm not one of the talkers, but can I make a comment? Because I'm
Yeah.
not getting objections at all. So,
You're not getting them.
nope.
You mean
I used to.
oh, please tell us how you, what I would love to know what you're doing to make sure that they don't even happen.
Yeah, I'm just letting them know. Well, I mean, if it does come up, I'm just saying that, you know, our writers are really good at writing conversion focused content. And also, like, a lot of our strategy has to do with targeting SEO keywords. And so we're writing the content specifically, like, you know, with those goals in mind. And they might be really good writers, and we'll be still sending them worksheets, and they'll be giving us an outline of what they want us to include. But in order to work with us, they need to use one of our writers.
Yeah, I'll just build on that and just contribute that if the biggest shift that I see in the partners we work with are going from trying to sell content and content just being a part of what you offer. And not a part of what you offer, but a part of how you deliver. So it's non-negotiable. And when I say non-negotiable, I don't mean, hey, you tell them, hey, you have to buy this content or else. I mean that from the very first call, that's one of the things that makes you special. That's one of the reasons why they're going for you and not someone else, is because you're going to give them the best result possible. You know that content is needed to achieve that. And so you just talk as if it's a sure thing. And, you know, there might be a little bit of discussion about how involved it's going to be. Or, you know, we even have one partner who, for example, hires a copywriter or a strategist to write the key conversion pages and then kind of lets the client, if they insist on doing it, do it for, you know, like the more descriptive. I don't recommend that. I recommend just making it non-negotiable altogether. But just never even needing to have that conversation. Like the people I speak to who often don't get a lot of objections, it's because you've positioned that it's part of your process from the beginning, and you've positioned why it's important from the beginning without saying, hey, do you want to invest in this extra thing? I don't know whether.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Like, I don't ask them if they want to invest.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a conversation. The conversation is like, you know, content is a huge part of our strategy. And so we have to be, you know, doing it. And by the way, it's usually about half of our estimate for our website projects.
Yeah, that's how, and I love this thing called, it's a permaculture principle. I'm a huge gardener, permaculture person, which is that the problem is the solution. The very thing that you feel so fearful about, put that, just put it out there front and center as one of your strengths, like reframe it to be one of your strengths. So you might say, oh my gosh, the client is going to think that content is half the size of the project, and that's crazy. How are they ever going to accept that? Reframe the conversation in your mind and practice with other people who are not necessarily the client or the prospect, where it's like, yeah, content is half. That's how important it is that it's going to be almost half of your quote. That's showing how important it is. What you're paying us for is to give you this amazing result, and content is how we're going to get you there. But again, I've spoken to people who, once they made that shift, they went from essentially arguing over content during every proposal to having very few objections about it at all.
And that's how we went. Like, we used to have like a lot of objections and going back and forth, but we just don't even do it. Like, it just doesn't even happen anymore.
Mm-hmm. I also have it's not a graphic, it's not pretty, because I suck at doing visual things, although I don't think it's ironically, I think it's interestingly, Charlie's also helping us put it together, but hasn't already. So I'm just going to share that super quick, which is what we call the hierarchy of content needs. So it's kind of like the hierarchy of web needs, except that we kind of observed in content how it's different. This I just want to finish typing out, long-term goals. But we look at it the same way. Like a lot of people who think that they're writers or they have a staff writer or something like that, maybe if you're lucky, they can hit level 1, which is that it's written for the web, it's skimmable, it has the formatting, has the bullets and lists. We're not even talking about how engaging it is. It just is readable. Maybe even if they have done some copywriting before, they're starting to look at, is it engaging? And maybe your cousin or aunt or staff or whoever can hit at this level. But once you start to get into, is it effective? Is it setting you apart? Is it building towards your long-term goals, right? Like something like voice and tone, although people talk about it like it's super easy, it's actually really challenging to nail, but it's less important. Well, okay, this is my personal opinion or company opinion, but worrying about having the perfect voice when you can't even tell a story or back up your content with proof points, if you can't even make it relevant to the audience or have simple, clear takeaways, it's not going to do very much for you. So this is similar thinking to Aaron, but it's like you might save a bunch of money, but you're not going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve to the greatest degree than if you work with someone who is comfortable working at all of these levels, or at least most of these levels. You know, I would say probably the three of us here, you know, what sets us apart is that we are all good at all of these levels, right? We can talk about, written for the web, okay. Yeah, we can speak to an audience and work from an avatar, but we can write kick-ass headlines and calls to action. We can marry it to a strategy, right? We can talk about an effective voice and tone. We can make it unique and memorable. You can avoid generic language, which I know should probably be down here, but somehow many successful copywriters are still using super generic language. And then start to make the data-driven decisions. Start to look at that user experience and really, really nail it. Look at what's going on in the long term. Stuff we are talking about with the landing page, the questions that Kevin was asking, you know, is it effective? What do the call to actions happen? Yeah, that's something that's down here in level 3. But really, if you want to really, really make it successful, it's not about whether you have a good call to action or too many calls to action. It's whether you have an explicit client journey, whether you have the data to know how to adjust things. You know, if you're content marketing, whether you know how your content calendar fits into these things, whether there's a clear and really, really fantastic user experience. These are the things that, unless you have a really, really remarkable staff writer even, you're not going to be able to capture. So I just wanted to share that as well. This is something that, like I said, I'm going to make it prettier and more visual, but it's just one of those things that has become super apparent as we've been working with people. Oh, look, and we're right at the end. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the time. I didn't mean to take us right there. Was there any like clarification or last thoughts or shares or gold nuggets or anything before we wrap up? Or questions? No, not hearing anything. How about gold nuggets? Any gold nuggets? Taking a page out of Brent Weaver's book. Anything that you learned that's new or exciting or cool? Or was this all like, oh yeah, I knew it before. I just hung out till the end because I like you.
I learned that I need Aaron's white label stuff.
You mean the questionnaires and stuff?
Thank
Yes.
you, Barry.
All right.
I'm excited to hear that.
Any other takeaways? Anything that surprised you in terms of an answer, or that just reinforced something, or something you're going to change in your business? Yeah. Ooh, tough crowd, tough crowd. Okay, I'm going to pick on you two then, Aaron and Abby. So from hearing the perspectives of the other people here, is there anything that was new to you or shifted for you or that was reinforced for you? Abby, on you first.
I guess that all content strategists really approach it in their own way. And It's just about finding the method that suits you and how you prefer to help your customers. Because, you know, like for me, I like to be well prepared, and I like to do my research, and I like to have everything structured, and then, you know, have deliverables. And Aaron is Zen man himself and likes to, you know, a little bit more laid back and everything. And I know that Say's really process driven and stuff. So it's just kind of figuring out what suits you, and yeah, I guess what suits your end client as well, because not everything is going to be suitable for every industry. I guess that's what I took from it.
That was great. That was a great takeaway, Abby. Wow, I'm glad I asked, because I agree 100%, right? It's not about most often, it's not about who is the quote unquote best content strategist or copywriter or whatever. It's which one is the most appropriate for you, your business, your clients, your goals, etc.
Yeah.
Aaron, did you have? I heard you starting to talk there.
What struck me is, you know, this is not the first time that we've had these we've done similar sessions for EU Academy before, and what struck me as interesting was the same questions, the same challenges persist. You know, it doesn't matter whether I'm talking in 2018 or 2013, right? This same stuff is here. I think content is here to stay, and all of us on this call know that, and maybe to varying degrees, our clients out there in the real world are starting to appreciate that, or maybe they've internalized it, or maybe they're sticking their heads in the sand and they don't want to admit it. So these kinds of challenges are almost ever present. It's just interesting for me to hear the same kinds of things from different people that I heard 2 years ago or that I heard 5 years ago. So if you're having these questions, if you're struggling, by all means, don't feel like you're the only person that's ever gone through this stuff. It is constant. It's out there constantly. And I think any one of us on this call would be happy to help you with those struggles. You know, message me or email me or drop a post on my Facebook profile or reach out to me on LinkedIn, however you want to get me. If you've got questions, just let me know anytime and I'll see what I can do. If bonus points, if you put it in EU Academy so that other people can benefit from it too. I think the takeaway is just, yeah, you're certainly not alone. These are solved problems. You just maybe don't know how to solve them yet. And so by all means, reach out.
Yeah, I agree. And I would also add to that some of these questions, especially around like objections and selling content and stuff, I know that at least Aaron and I'm not sure about you, Abby, also have some like published content that can help you with that as a reference or a resource. So I also encourage you to ask for that kind of stuff. I mean, let's face it, even if we haven't already produced it, knowing what you need, like when Barry said, oh, hey, we would love a list of those questions that we need to have prepared or something. Was that Barry? Sorry if it wasn't. Then those are the things we want to know. Like, we are here to serve you. You have this amazing group where you can get other people's feedback and put it in there. So definitely encourage you to reach out personally or submit something on the group. Make requests. We are here to serve you in any way that we can make it easier for you to sell content and hire us. I mean, let's be honest, we're gonna try and support that, right?
I have another comment. We actually have quite a few different writers, and we've used like a lot of different writers, and we find that some writers are better at some things than other things. So like some are better at email funnels. We have one writer we've been using for years that specializes in the solar space, right? We have like different writers for different, some are better at like strategy, some are better like if you have like a bigger budget and a bigger client where you can do like, you know, we did this huge project with Aaron, like that was like massive, that's done really well, right? So that was really expensive for the client, right? So it just depends on like what we're doing. And then the other part of it is, you know, we sell a ton of content, and that content has brought us a lot of income. So like we're selling blog post like SEO retainers, and then we're selling email funnel retainers, and all of those are dependent upon content. So I think it's a huge opportunity to make a lot more money and to get a lot more retainer kind of contracts. At least that's what we're doing. Like in every one of our 2 kind of retainers, we went from 2,000, now we're at 20,000 a month in retainers. And, a lot of that has a content like part to it. So I just wanted to share like the opportunity there. If you're not doing it, it can make you a lot of more money and
Absolutely.
offer the client a lot more value, I feel like, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, even just speaking to that, like different strengths and stuff. I know at least if you come to us, we will also tell you whether or not something that you are interested in working with us on is our greatest strength. Like, for example, we've worked on e-commerce projects. We have some e-commerce projects we're working on right now. We're good at it. But speaking to Abby, like she has years and years and years of experience specifically in e-commerce. Or, like you guys all know that we at Anansi are super into process, right? So what that means is that if you really want it to be absolutely clear for you and your clients every time when you're going to be meeting, what it looks like, what the steps are, etc., then we're probably a better fit. If you want someone who has an unparalleled amount of experience because he is so much older than both of us put together. Sorry. No, I'm joking.
Hey, I'm older than Aaron.
I'm not in diapers yet.
But
I'm older than you, Aaron. So hey,
no, but you haven't been working in content for that long. Maybe a better way to put it is that Aaron has probably been writing conversion content for most of my life
since you were in short pants, Gabriel.
Yeah. So if you want like maximum conversion and you're okay with that kind of more flexibility, or maybe it's going to take a little bit longer or something like that, right? Then maybe Aaron. Right? I'm not trying to say that we're pigeonholed into these buckets, just that, one of the reasons that we're doing this kind of thing together is that while on some level we're competing, we also just have different areas of expertise. And just based on what Abby was saying, right? Like the people that we work best with depends on the project. It depends on the agency. It depends what you're looking for. It depends what you need. So I don't know, hopefully that didn't make things worse or more complicated, but it's not, you don't have to be like, oh, if you've worked with one of us and you're working with another one of us now, or vice versa, or both at the same time. This isn't like fighting to the death.
The abundance mindset. Brent would be proud.
Exactly. Or if you're here to help you work with a separate copywriter that has nothing to do with one of the 3 of us, we're not sitting here secretly hating you or anything like that. Awesome. Well, we are over time, and I can see that we're starting to lose people who are going off to their other pursuits or meetings or etc. Maybe they're just taking off because it's Friday and taking.
It's Friday night here.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
To go.
Thank you for spending your Friday night with us, Abby.
I love content.
Anyway, any last just like question, comments, thoughts from anyone, including Aaron and Abby, before we wrap up for good?
For those who are still here, I will say this. I am really close to doing a course that you can follow along with on how to sell content. Ooh. So if that's appealing, drop me a line, let me know, and that will actually motivate me to finish the damn thing.
That's excellent. If you want to, if that's something that you also want to generate more interest around, Aaron, we could also potentially do another one of these sessions around that topic or something like that. I know I hear a lot of people still feeling confused or fearful around that. So that's also, yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that separately maybe later, but would you guys be, there's only maybe like 5 to 10 of you guys left. Would you be interested in more focused sessions like this, maybe with particular themes or something like that? Like, was this helpful for you? Can you drop a number into chat about your rating? I don't know. Just we'd love some feedback.
I would love some like strategy ideas of like high value content, of like what type of content might be good to like use for different types of situations, or different parts of the funnel, you know, so I can even like brainstorm of like, because you
Yeah,
know,
no, definitely.
we have a client right now that, you know, they're it's like they're going from zero, they're asking for an appointment to sell them on like a huge contract, right? And there's like not very much like high value content like in between then, you know,
Yeah,
to educate them and build and get them to move up the ladder. So I don't know,
So you mean in
just
the
like more
agency sales funnel?
strategy. Pardon me?
Sorry, so I just wanted to clarify. So you mean for your sales funnel, you are interested in different types of content that can support it at different
Nope,
stages? Is that
for
what I'm hearing?
clients.
Oh, okay.
For
yeah, for a
clients.
client. Like, I think the question is, knowing the sales funnel and knowing that it could be different for every client. What's an easy way to brainstorm top of the funnel content, middle of the funnel content, bottom of the funnel content for client X, and then turn around again and do it for client Y and client Z?
Yeah, and even like Aaron knowing like what types of content might be good fit for bottom of the funnel, middle of the funnel, top of the funnel.
Yeah.
And so when I'm talking to clients, you know, that's what I really need help on is like, okay, we're writing content, but we need higher conversions. Like we
Gosh, I
need
think
more action.
I think I did something like that for U Summit, which admittedly was really obtuse. It was really dense. I did it in Austin, I think. No, Denver.
Oh, no, that was Denver because I remember that.
Denver, yeah. So Austin, no, it was Austin. We did your landing page, Deborah, and then in the first Denver, I did something like that, but it was super dense. And I think I've also done something like that for BC Gurus way back when. So what I'll do is I'll try to dig up those BC Gurus notes and maybe try to refilm, and then I might even be able to drop it into the U Academy Facebook group.
Yeah, because converting people and getting like more interactions with what we're doing is like we're putting out a lot of good stuff, but it's not really like there's no strategy on like, oh, we're giving them this stuff at this, you know, stage, and then this at this stage, and then this at
like
this
more
stage.
of a system
Yeah.
funnel, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that too can be addressed both on a theory level and a practical level, so that you know you understand. Okay, this is what's going on at each level of the funnel. Here are some ideas about what you can release. But there's also, maybe this is just my process brain, but there's also kind of an organizational element which we would build into like a content calendar, for example, which is that if you're releasing regular content, you want to know kind of where you're focusing on primarily. You know, how much and when you're going to be releasing stuff for people at other parts of the funnel, you know, if you're building on an ongoing way. So I think that there's, anyway, I look forward to Aaron, you sharing. But I think this is something that we could definitely unpack a lot more and break down in greater detail as well.
That would be like super valuable, I think, for us.
Okay.
Well,
yeah, I would say that I would love to have more sessions like this. This is something I feel really passionate about, is just kind of sharing our expertise with people. So, you know, in the meantime, you and all of us will benefit from Aaron sharing that info. I remember that talk at U Summit Denver, maybe because I'm a giant nerd, but I really, really enjoyed it and didn't find it dense at all then. But obviously this is also my area of expertise. And then, you know, we can always have another Q&A type thing where, you know, we unpack it for you, answer your questions around it. You know, Aaron can potentially go into greater detail. We can give our perspectives, etc. Does that sound, I'm seeing some nods. All right. Okay, cool. Well, on that amazing note, I need to go and, you know, I welcome you guys if you do want to stay, but I know that all of us have lots going on. This has been great from our end. Abby, Aaron, do you guys agree?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, great. So if you guys are interested.
Thank you. Thank you, you guys, for putting this together. It's awesome.
Yay.
Thank you.
All right.
Let me read questions. I'm going to go to the beach now.
Nice.
Thanks, Barry, for holding everybody
Thank
together.
you, Barry, for saving our butts and organizing all the questions for us.
Anytime. Be glad to help in the future.
Have a
Barry,
great Friday,
I'm
guys.
going to
and a
the,
great
Bye,
I'm
you
going to the
guys.
beach, Barry.
Thanks,
I'm going to finally put my arm down.
Bye.
All right, guys. See ya. You're still here, Kelly. Hey there. I guess we're still on recording, so don't say anything about, how much you dislike working with Brian or anything. Unfortunately, you're muted, so we can't hear you. We can't hear you talk. I can't hear you. Sorry, we'll have to bail out. If you want to, reach out to me if you got questions, because something's wrong with your mic. So I'll talk to you soon. See ya.